Hello, how do I describe my guest today? Loud, colourful, internationally known? Well, enough about his trousers. George Robin Paget Ferguson, CBE, is part of the fabric of Bristol and from 2012 was the first elected mayor of this great city. The sparrings between Big George and Marvellous Marvin have been headline makers in themselves, and despite being ousted from power by Mayor Rees 5 years ago, the fingers of Ferguson are found in many significant pies today. There's his controversial new vision for the world-famous zoo gardens that's ruffling a few feathers, and I don't mean of the exotic birds, and his stance on the council voting to hold a referendum on the very mayoral position he once held. Let's meet George Ferguson. Yeah, George, welcome. It's great to have a sit down with you, and it's been a while since we caught up on political matters and personal matters and everything else. But we do so with another referendum, not another one. Where's Brenda when you need her? I mean, over the last 10 years, how many times have the good people of Bristol been asked to go and vote for yet another system or another set of politicians?
Well, it was 10 years ago in May 2012 that we voted by referendum to have a mayor. So I don't think that it's too often, but I was asked when I became mayor whether I would support it being reviewed after 10 years. And I thought that was the right thing to do. You shouldn't be stuck with a system forever, whatever happens. And so much has changed since then. The whole system has changed. The West of England now has a mayor, and we'll talk no doubt more about that. So we are in a different world.
We are, and I wonder, I've been with the process from the beginning, from you doing debates on the subject from when it started through to where we are today. And I wonder about that role. I wonder who actually applies to be the mayor. Everybody thinks I can do it, but there are one or two serious contenders, and that's proved in each of the three races so far, isn't it? And yet, you know, are we attracting the best people to be in a position like this? You did it for the love of the city. The money was irrelevant. But when you're talking £75,000 and you've got the budget of a small country, are we attracting the best entrepreneurs, the best business people, somebody who could actually take a city like this and give it a shake and do that job? Are we attracting those people?
Well, I'm probably the worst person to ask that because I was one of those two people. But I think it is wrong, to my mind, that it attracts people who are too devoted to the party system. And as you know, I stood as an independent because I wanted to make it quite clear that every decision should be about Bristol's best interest, not about my party's interest. And I think too often we see people who put their party first and their place second. And I feel...
We're talking about Marvin Rees here.
Well, I'm not necessarily talking about Marvin, but I think I'm certainly not talking about Andy Burnham in Manchester. I'm not talking about Andy Street in Birmingham.
Yeah.
I think those are two party mayors who have risen way above that and have put their city region first. And they're respected in Westminster.
So who are you talking about then?
Well, I think Bristol has been plagued, to be honest, by party division. And when I was mayor, there was a lot of grandstanding within the council that was all about party differences. And what was absolutely brilliant as an independent is that I was able to bring all four parties represented on the council into my cabinet.
But does that actually work? I mean, here we've got Marvin Rees, who's got a complete Labour cabinet, when you've got the Green Party with 24 level pegging with Labour, not represented on that. Two different ways of trying the same thing, but both you and Marvin still have your critics, and still people say, why should one person hold sway, hold veto over the rest of the council and the rest of the city?
Yeah, but I can't remember a time when I took a decision against the majority of the cabinet. And they became friends, and they were really good at leaving their party politics out of the room. When you've got a single party cabinet, inevitably it becomes party decisions. Marvin actually promised he would have an all-party cabinet, or certainly not an all-Labour cabinet. He got, I think, twitchy, bored about being criticised sometimes from within his cabinet. And was that right or wrong? Well, I think you've got to, as a leader, listen to opposing positions, and you've got to make your decision based on a balanced view.
But you're in that position, and you were the same, George, where you think you're fundamentally right, that you've got the vision for the city, and you're going to try and power that through. Whatever the setup is behind the scenes, you're going to make the decision, and inevitably the buck stops with you. Isn't that the whole point of the mayor, that the figurehead with the big ideas gets things done, that it doesn't end up in the quagmire that we have before the mayoral system, where nothing happened in Bristol?
Well, you say nothing happened. Actually, a lot did happen.
Took a long time, didn't it?
And I think the biggest problem is that we had annual elections by thirds, and therefore the council was in permanent election mode. And that is the biggest change that was made. It was a much bigger change, and it was a change that I brought in, that I campaigned for, and managed to get the council to agree to, against my better interest, because it was going to be much more difficult for me to fight a second election under an all-out 4-yearly election than it would have been if it had been a third. 4 yearly all-out elections cures that. And there may be some changes in leadership, but it will be a much more democratic decision-making council than one that has a single party mayor that absolutely believes, because it's reinforced by his own cabinet, that he's right.
I mean, I've enjoyed the scrap that clearly goes on between you and Marvin. I mean, I think underneath it all, I don't know, are you friends? Are you?
No, I don't.
Are you amiable? Because on the surface, there is a friction between the pair of you, and there always has been, hasn't there? Well, it's been that big head-to-head, hasn't it?
It doesn't come from me. Honestly, I have absolutely no personal dislike for Marvin. Of course, I criticize some of the things he does. I have a very passionate belief in us making a healthier, more environmental friendly city. And I realize that our cities have been wrecked by the domination of cars. That has to be dealt with. And I have been critical of the failure to deal with that. And, you know, I had some momentum going on that.
So, well, we're getting a lot of the city now closed to cars, aren't we? We're hearing that Park Street might be next. We've seen vast changes in not driving through the city centre under this current regime.
But we had an opportunity. We had an opportunity to make the whole city a clean air zone, like is happening in London. And but there's been resistance to that. And of course I criticise it. I criticise the fact that Marvin is encouraging high buildings across the city, which totally kills the golden goose. The golden goose is Bristol's history, its character, its wonderful culture.
I have to say.
And so, yes, of course I criticise.
I'm with Marvin. I do like a high building, as long as it's nicely done. And there's some fabulous cities around the world which is testimony to it. We may argue about that one.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying no high buildings, but I'm saying that now developers think, the mayor will encourage us. If we come up with a 20-story building, he'll say add another 10. And we've got the ugliest high building in Britain, just about on the corner of Castle Park. You know, and so yes, I criticise it, but I don't dislike Marvin.
Well, let's get back to
when we meet.
Let's get back to the
perfectly
setup.
Civil.
Sorry to cut across you, George. With time, I know these conversations go on for hours. Let's get back to the politics of it and whether or not we need a mayor or what this whole setup is. You say that we streamlined it a great deal by getting rid of those thirds and so on, and getting into a more streamlined way of voting. Yeah, we've got 3 mayors at the moment. Now, Marvin is a little bit nonplussed at your stance. In fact, let's hear what he said at the press conference the other day. And this is how he put it with your stance and where you are with the mayor, the mayoral position that you held. Have a listen to this.
I didn't hear it.
I mean, the fact that the first mayor of Bristol, who campaigned so energetically for there to be a mayoral model, I pulled out his manifesto the other day, and then did the role and then lost the role, and now had the campaigns against the role. I mean, that speaks for itself, really.
I like the little giggle at the end of that, but the point was well and truly made there. Come on, are you just being politically expedient, or what are you doing, George?
No, I think that was a bit narky, to be honest. I mean, the world has changed, as I said.
We like a bit of narc from time to time. We all like a bit of narc.
Yeah,
from time to
absolutely,
time.
yeah. I mean, he would say it, wouldn't he? But I absolutely believe that we're now in a completely different position. And the metro mayors are the people that government listens to. And at the moment, government don't know who to listen to. And we are not getting the deals that the strong metro mayors are getting. And, Bristol, Marvin, is undermining the role of the metro mayor, locking him out of meetings together with some of the other leaders. He is preventing North Somerset coming into the fold, which it naturally should. It's part of the Bristol and Bath City region, the west of England.
All right, I think you're referring to people who don't know the internals of the politics.
Yeah.
There's 60 million, wasn't it, for the Green Recovery, and a lot of toing and froing between the four authorities and Dan Norris, the Metro Mayor, where they ended up not speaking to each other, in the end, and it became a veto. In fact, I think he called it pantomime season, didn't he? And then, not to mix these metaphors, with the hokey cokey three. So I like Dan's style on all this.
Yeah, no, well, I sympathise with Dan on that.
But look, 10 years on from elected mayors, and now we've got that going on. Isn't it fair that the people of Bristol and the rest of the region throw their hands up in horror and say, for goodness sake, what is going on? Get it together, guys, and let's take on Birmingham and Manchester.
Absolutely.
And have some.
Well, I totally agree. We won't while we go.
But why is this happening? Why was this allowed to happen?
I was gobsmacked by it. Why? It's happened because there is a real competition between two Labour mayors. And, I think Dan has come in quite a difficult position. He's followed a metro mayor who was ineffective. He's a nice man, but he wasn't, people can't even remember his name. And I think that Dan now needs to be given a free run to do what these more powerful metro mayors are doing.
What worries people is having a free run, isn't it? I think that is perhaps what's part of the problem is.
Well,
can you let people... A moment ago, you were saying that Marvin, in a way, had to be held back and be accountable to cabinet and so on, and not have the free run that he's got.
No, but Dan Norris, our metro mayor, he in effect has three people in his cabinet. That is or should be four, and that is the leaders of the four district councils. Not all of his persuasion, and I found that. A really, it was a good process. When was making regional decisions with the leaders of the other councils, and I negotiated that with the Treasury. We got a huge deal with the Treasury in order to get a metro mayor. I knew that would eventually be the death of the mayoral position in Bristol, and I wouldn't have stood for the Bristol mayor if the metro mayor had existed.
You'd have gone for the metro mayor.
Well, I would have gone for the metro mayor. It is a much more sensible role, and honestly, having both of them is proving
it's
to be
not
quite
only that,
destructive.
it is confusing. I have to say that back in 2017, Marvin and I tried to explain how this system worked, or how we saw it working. We'll have a little discussion after this clip as to whether or not anything is any clearer in 2021, but this is how we sort of tried to explain it back then. Have a watch of this. Shall I explain this one, Marvin? Shall I go for this? Essentially, Bristol's got a Lord Mayor and an elected mayor, and we'll sort of a Metro Mayor, who will also be the Metro Mayor of South Gloucestershire and Bath and North East Somerset, who don't have mayors of their own, but have got leaders. North Somerset also have a leader, but won't have a Metro Mayor because they don't want one. But having said that, they'll still be involved in the West of England region, who will have a Metro Mayor, but they won't get any of the funds. I don't know why people find this confusing.
Well, the only thing is he won't be the Metro Mayor of North Somerset.
No,
we're still in the local enterprise partnership area.
Exactly, so we're still talking.
Right?
Thanks for clearing that up.
That's okay.
Absolutely clear, wasn't it? And here we are in 2021. Let's just watch one other clip, actually, because this is Marvin on his press conference a couple of days ago. Just watch this, it's self-explanatory.
When that argument is voiced, what you have, the biggest piece of evidence in front of you is someone who clearly has very little understanding of the role of the mayor of Bristol, and has a very little understanding of the metro mayor role. That has 3 areas of responsibility that overlap with local authority leaders, right? Transport, housing, and adult skills. Nothing about children's education in there. You know, I mean, vast areas of what we do at the local authority level not covered by the metro mayor. So either they're showing an absolute lack of understanding of the roles, or they do understand, but they're choosing not to share that with the public for the sake of trying to advance their own argument. I mean, it doesn't take 10 seconds to pick that apart. It's a nonsense argument.
So there we are. Yeah, dead simple, apparently. And that was aimed at you, I believe, in that conference. I will take issue actually with Marvin. He has been invited on, incidentally, so we're showing some clips to give an idea of where he stands. But I think it's slightly ingenuous to say that if you don't understand this system, you're either being very silly or deliberately being obtuse. I think 99% of the people will be scratching their heads about what's going on. I don't claim to understand the whole thing. I've been following it closely for 10 years. It is complicated as to what roles a metro mayor has and a city mayor, and why should the public actually know the difference in great detail?
Absolutely. I mean, it's certainly not stupid not to understand. I happen to understand, A, because I was the mayor of Bristol, and B, because I have effectively introduced the role of metro mayor into the region through our negotiations. So I fully understand, and I also look at the power of the metro mayors. And what Marvin has missed out is that Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester, for instance, has been able to bring health, police, and other powers into the metro mayor role. And I mean, we hear him on the news all the time. He's like the Prime Minister of North of England. And West of England is losing out.
Because we don't have an identity. Because we don't know what we are, do we here?
No.
We don't even have a name for the region as such. I could show another, I won't bother with another clip, I've got a clip of that as well.
Yeah.
But what is this region? We've got the powerhouse of the north, we know exactly what it is. But when we come to the west, the number of times over the last 10 years, whether we're linking up between Bristol, Bath and Newport, or Swansea to Swindon, or we don't seem to ever have settled, George. And is this somebody's fault, or is it just because of the topography of where we are, on what our region is and what it stands for,
I think,
to get that up into the public?
Well, I think there have been some
mentality.
petty competition sometimes. I mean, I think there's a clarity. When we were marketing this region internationally, we would call it the Bristol and Bath city region. People had heard of Bath and they've heard of Bristol.
Yeah.
Bath, of course, wanted to call it the Bath and Bristol city region. Bully for them.
Well, set aside 5 years, you can sit and discuss that.
Yeah, quite. But anyway, there was a clarity about that. People know where the place is.
Yeah.
And nobody is far from Bristol or Bath within what's now called the West of England, which nobody really knows where it is.
Yeah.
So there's a lot in the name, and if I'd been Metro Mayor, I would have had it changed to the Bristol and Bath City region as
What does the
soon
Metro
as
Mayor
possible.
want to call it? Do we know? What does Dan?
I don't know actually. I mean, I think I've entered that conversation with Dan, but over a drink, but not concluded it.
Dan has been invited on, so come on, please, and talk to us about this. But isn't that fundamental as to what the region actually is, what the identity is, how people can feel part of it, instead of the 4 authorities who've always been sort of quite rightly looking after what is theirs. But where is this shared
but what
identity?
Is theirs? What is theirs? Bristol has now grown way outside its boundary, into Filton and Bradley Stoke, and it's almost filled up the land between Bristol and the motorway, the M5 and M4. And so Bristol, the boundary, doesn't contain the whole urban area. And this has happened to a lot of metropolitan cities. And that is why the government, quite sensibly, having made a bit of a cock-up to begin with, decided on the role of the Metro Mayor, which is much more inclusive in terms of the city. I mean, we've now got almost a competing city, which is part of South Gloucestershire, north of Bristol, sucking stuff out of Bristol. Let's think of it as a whole and work as a whole and have leadership that reflects that.
Rather than getting towards Cribbs Causeway and moving into South Gloss and suddenly you're in a completely different area. It should all be part of this celebrating this great region of ours.
It is the immediate economic area. Why is Business West? Why does it use its boundary? Why does the LEP, why do they use their boundary as the boundaries of North Somerset, South Gloucestershire and Bath and North East Somerset? Because it is the economic area of Bristol and Bath.
I want to just come on to move on in a second or two, but just before we do that, to celebrate what the mayoral system has brought us. I mean, with you, Green Capital, and residential parking and zones and so on. And it might have been partly your downfall, but also that is now seen as just being a way of life, isn't it? And a necessary way of life.
Absolutely.
Might have been your nemesis. And I suppose for Marvin, what Channel 4 coming and plenty of schemes going on that he's involved with. Is there something to say, actually, the mayoral system has been damn good for this city?
Yeah. I mean,
let me ask you this, George. Sorry, it's a long question. But say, from your point of view, European Green City, what has that left us to somebody living in Knowle West or whatever? What is that? What is the legacy of that, and how's that improved?
Well, I think that's left us big and small legacies. But first of all, I'd like to give credit to the previous leaders of the City Council who built us up to a point when we were shortlisted. And what I managed to do was take it over the line. And I do know from the feedback from the European Commission that it made a difference, that I was able to champion it as somebody who has a passionate belief in what it stood for.
And Marvin has taken that on as well, because he's internationally known now and is giving profile to the city, as you did at that time as well.
Absolutely. And Marvin's international profile is good for the city. And I think what he did after the Colston statue came down, and the fact that we have a black mayor during Black Lives Matter protests, has been incredibly important. So there are things that have given us international profiles.
Yeah, there have been some disasters, haven't there? Bristol Energy being one of them. I mean, started just toward the tail end of your tenure and then followed through with 50 million or whatever deficit for the people here. I mean, do you regret having started that process at that time, or was it was it just something that went off the rails?
I regret it. I think in hindsight it was wrong. But there were lots of people setting up energy companies. We were encouraged to do so. There were huge changes in the market. We were meeting our targets early on. I think there was probably a reluctance to admit that it was going wrong early enough. And so good money was poured in after bad, and one frankly can't. I've said it before. One can't sum it up as being anything but a bloody disaster. Bristol has paid the price. I'm still a customer of Bristol Energy, which is now under a bigger umbrella.
Yeah, a lot of those companies falling like skittles at the minute as it happens.
But it had a very good purpose, and I think that the main problem is that management didn't see the writing on the wall. And
and a lot of people paying for it will for quite some time. Let's talk zoos now, because Bristol Zoo, the first provincial zoo in the world, actually, for moving to the Wild Play site at Easter Compton near Cribbs Causeway, paying for that move, I have to say, through the selling of its prime Clifton Zoological Garden site for housing. George Ferguson and a range of interested parties, latterly I think Jonathan Dimbleby has joined that merry crew, saw an opportunity for a new and unique visitor attraction that addresses the wonders of and the threats to the natural world on the site, and have been trying to persuade the zoo that it's a feasible and, frankly, George would say, more exciting alternative to housing. In a sentence or two, George, what is it? What is our place going to look like, and why should people outside the Clifton bubble care?
Well, people should care outside the Clifton bubble, because Bristol has 2 or 3 wonderful attractions, of which the Bristol Zoo is the first provincial zoo in the world, has a wonderful, wonderful walled garden, attracts people to Clifton for the only reason many of them would ever come here, attracts people from schools across the city. Otherwise, without Bristol Zoo, without an attraction on that site, which represents what it stands for, Clifton is just a privileged housing area with expensive schools and specialty shopping district. You know, it's a vital social issue, to my mind, to maintain a major attraction in that area. What is it? What it is the urban zoo of the future. It's the urban zoo that encourages wildlife, but not caged wildlife within its site. So it's biodiverse. It brings in the Hollywood of natural history filming, which is what we have with the BBC in Bristol. You know, we have way over half the world's natural history filming in Bristol now. Bristol also is now Bristolwood. It's you know, we're attracting filming of all sorts.
Yeah.
And it ties in really well with the university, which has a 45 million project called My World, which is all about augmented reality, virtual reality, about using new methods for understanding our natural world.
And you've got, as I say, a lot of people behind this, people who are household names in this area and around the rest of the country as well. Tom Morris from the Old Vic is there. You've got Tim Smith from the Eden Project. People like Stephen Daldry directed the Crown, the broadcaster. Professor Alice Roberts has actually written a foreword to the brochure. Big names. I'm going to come on to the but in just a second or two.
I'm waiting for it.
But when you've got that weight of and Jonathan Dimbleby loves the whole idea as well. Have you got people like the natural history units at the BBC? Have you got Clifton College? Have you got those people actually on board, or is that aspiration?
Well, Clifton College have endorsed it, and I actually see a possible outcome that involves Clifton College, who want some more cultural buildings or cultural facilities, that involves the BBC, and we've been having conversations with various elements of the BBC, and maybe involves the zoo itself. I think the problem is that the zoo has seen this as competition. We don't see it as competition at all. We see it as putting Bristol Zoo right up at the top of the world's zoos, and creating a place that is an opportunity for other zoos across the world. I've been contacted by other zoos, including I was talking to a university in Calcutta about how they would like to have a look at the Calcutta Zoo, which is in a similar situation, slightly bigger than ours.
Is there a chance that, is there a chance that if it didn't come off here, and we'll come to the reasons why it might not in just a second, that you would take the idea somewhere else? Would Bristol lose out if this
Well, it would
happen?
be a shame, because Bristol, as you say, is probably one of the most interesting historic zoos in the world. It was almost the site of where the fourth dinosaur in the world was discovered. There were mammoths roaming on the downs. The Avon Gorge was formed in the Ice Age. The augmented reality could enable you to connect to all those things in a really exciting manner. And so it would be a great shame. But the answer, of course, is yes, this idea can be, and I hope will be, transported to other places. But there would be no better showcase in the world, combined with all our other strengths, than Bristol.
Yeah, and yet the zoo itself has come up with an alternative, putting the housing in there that it needs, but also having a nice open area and biodiversity, and people can walk literally off the road and in there and enjoy it free.
Can I? Yes.
And then hang on a sec, because it gets more involved, because there's this open letter from the 5 tourism leaders, isn't there? John Savage, Catherine Davis is in there as well, and people like Andrew Billingham from the YTL Arena and so on, who've basically come out and said, look, collectively, this isn't on. It's completely unviable. You haven't costed the thing properly. It's an idea, but we're not in the real world here. I think it's wildly exciting, but that is my sort of creative dreaming? Is that what it is? Just a dream, George?
No,
Is
not
it
at
another
all.
George Ferguson.
No, not
Let's
at all.
fly this and see where it goes.
What is interesting, not one of those people has asked us one question about it. This was Justin Morris, who is the director of the zoo, got in touch with John Hurst, who is the ex-champion of Bristol tourism.
He's a great guy. Loves Bristol.
Lovely guy.
Knows his
He loves it.
Knows
But
his stuff.
he doesn't have a clue about these things. John's a lovely guy, I know. And John managed.
Hang on. He doesn't have a clue about these things.
No, he doesn't have
He ran the tourism.
Yeah, I know, but
Here.
he doesn't have a clue about the technology or what this is about.
But he knows what makes a good tourism
it was
destination.
about but what is more interesting is the people who didn't sign it. And people have got in touch with me since who were asked to sign that letter and refused.
Francesca Fryer,
for very good reason.
The Bristol Zoological Society's director of transformation, said there's no car parking. And after 2024, there won't be by government diktat. You can't operate after that as a visitor attraction, as a High Court ruling prevents it. She says our world is unviable. It would cost many tens of millions of pounds. She says that all you've done is create an artist's impression. Nice drawings, and the proposal of a giant tower overlooking Clifton properties is not on anyway. The zoo don't want it. Why are people not? Why are they not moved by not only your dream, even if it's a slightly personal thing against you and your ideas? I don't know, but all these other people who are saying this is a great thing and would be wonderful for Bristol. Why are they?
Yeah.
Why do you reach this stalemate?
Francesca Fryer has the title of Director of Transformation. She was brought in to make the most of their property in order to raise money for their motorway junction zoo.
So the easiest thing is to sell houses.
And I want them to make money for their conservation projects. I think I've never said that I don't want them to make money. They've just sold, or they've got an agreement to sell the car park for £12 million. That's a pretty good deal, and we've never got in the way of that.
But they need what?
Even though I think
how much is it? They need 75 or something. Is that
or need
these figures?
No, they were talking about needing 45.
45.
But anyway, it's a number that gets batted about. But nobody has a right to have a planning permission because they need money, and I think there is a solution there that will raise them the money they need, but it can be done in a way that satisfies everybody. And they've come up with is, this idea of a garden that everybody can have access to. Well, who's going to go out of their way to go to a garden within a private housing estate to have a look at a load of blocks of flats? I mean, unless they just want to see...
if it is our world with all this wonderful VR and a major visitor attraction with no car parking and difficulty to get there, how's that going to work?
Well, because that will make you... I mean, what I didn't finish is saying, why would you go to a garden within a housing estate other than see how the other half lives? But why would you go to our world? You go to it because, A, it's a world first, and Bristol likes first.
If you can get there.
Yeah. And you would get there by the shuttle bus that we propose that links all the attractions in Bristol. I've been to cities in Europe and America where you get shuttle buses which to places that have no car parking. And most urban attractions don't have anything like sufficient car parking.
Yeah.
And therefore, you have to find other ways to get them there. And this world is going to be saved by the people who define the solutions of how to get to places without a car.
Yeah, but while there is no way of getting there and they need to get this money raised and they're moving next year or the year after that, they need to be pragmatic, don't they? They need to have solutions. Have you offered them a business plan?
Yes, we are actually...
Have you offered them a costed business plan?
We've given them outline of the costings. The business plan is it will be produced for early next year. But the figures add up and they just don't want to listen.
Are they excited? Can I just ask?
I'm a supporter of the zoo. Yeah. I'm a real supporter of the zoo. What I don't like is caged animals. Yeah. And we're all driven by that.
Well, I think everybody's on that
We're
page.
all driven by that.
But are they excited by the idea? I mean, leaving aside the financial implications that they've got to sort out, when you sit down with Justin and with the others and Freya and so, do you see them sort of thinking, actually, this would be good? Or are they just against the idea? They say you did something similar at Bristol, which now we the curious, and it fell flat because nobody went to see it, this augmented reality.
Well, that was 25 years ago that was devised.
Maybe not the best argument they've used in that case.
That was all about TV screens and pressing buttons.
Things have moved on,
old technology.
Yeah.
And I think that just shows a level of ignorance amongst those people who signed that letter, because that's what they cite. And
we discussed earlier in the interview about calling people ignorant because they don't understand something.
A level of ignorance.
I'll let you wait. Do you think it's going to happen?
I think it's 50-50 as to whether it happens or not. I mean, I believe in the art of the impossible. Eden wouldn't have happened if you hadn't got a nutter like Tim Smith with the determination to drive it through. Yeah. And
that's good currency to have behind you, isn't it? Somebody like that who's been there.
To me, there is no issue about failure. I'd never avoid doing something because of the fear of failure. What I do know is that out of this will come great things. And the greatest thing would be if it could happen on the zoo side.
We're out of time. Just finally, George, what are your own? We're in dire times at the minute with this pandemic and everything else that's going on. Nobody quite knows what the future is, but I still see the glint in your eye. I still see the excitement by new projects and so on. How do you look into the next year or the next couple of years? What's exciting you about life at the minute, and where do you see it going, both for you and for the city?
Well, I think localism, that may sound a bit dull, but what I do think is the answer to all the problems that we have is trying to become more self-sufficient. And we've caused ourselves a huge challenge with coming out of the EU, and we're now having to trade at the other side of the world. And this is environmentally damaging, it's economically damaging as well. And I think what the huge challenge we've got is to look at how cities operated as self-sustaining regions, city regions. And I think we've got an opportunity to do that. And as you know, I started the tobacco factory in 1994, and over the 27, 28 years, I've grown things up around it. We now have a small farm. We provide our own food. And I've always used it as a microcosm for what I believe should happen in cities. And personally, I will be building on that family of things that are all connected, that help regenerate in a proper sense. And so if Bristol could become more self-sufficient, not shutting itself to the outside world, because I think it's really important that we remain an international city. But if we could be fed with the food that we grow around the city, rather than it being flown in or taken from, in big trucks to other parts of the country before it comes back to us, that is the sort of simple guiding principle that would justify us having the title of European Green Capital,
and also the Bristol Bath city region that will make people sit up and think, actually, that's an important part of this country. Absolutely. Just like the North and the Midlands. Yeah. Great talking to you, George. Thank you very much indeed. And that is about it for this particular talkback. We will be back very soon with another guest. We will see you then. Bye-bye.